LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Disney Plus wants to know, are you ready? For Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, now streaming on Disney Plus.
Let's do this.
One of the best Marvel movies of all time is now streaming on Disney Plus.
Hey, you weren't listening to me.
I said Thunderbolts, The New Avengers is now streaming on Disney Plus.
Meet the New Avengers.
That's cool name.
Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, rated PG-13. Now streaming on, you guessed it, Disney Plus.
Wonder-working power in the precious...
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria.
You may wish to adjust the dial you are currently tuned into. The wrong station. We were down by the water that night, with a couple beers and a little weed. One of the last times we were down there together. June, senior year. Hamilton's got 2 big businesses, making steel and shipping steel. Now, despite all that steel shipping out, the waterfront's a nice spot. A little roller rink, a bandstand, a heritage battleship that got used in World War II parked right in the harbor. It's open for tours. The lake was pitch black that night. Even the light from the lampposts wasn't showing us much. Leo and I were posted up on a bench on the pier, wishing we'd brought our rods. Lots of people fished off the pier. They could pull up all kinds of stuff. Bass, trout, even pike. Nobody was out that night, though, so it was real quiet. Quiet enough we could hear every fish. Little splashes and ripples. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Little bits of movement under the surface. About a kilometer away is the industrial zone. It's a big mess of pipes and buildings and cranes. A giant lake freighter was sitting in the dock. We could see it from where we were drinking. Leo pointed with his bottle. "That's what I'm going to do," he said. First time I'd ever heard him talk about the future. You know, we were fuckheads. Still are. Or I still am, anyway. I looked where he was pointing. "You mean the freighter or the steel?" Leo nodded. "Freighter," he said. "It's a good way to make money." And, you know, I'm talking about freighters here. Real freighters. 700 feet long, carrying 20,000 tons at least. People not from around the Great Lakes might not get how big these shipping lanes are. The Great Lakes are real big. I'm part Scottish, or maybe it's Irish. And I know people talk a lot about Loch Ness. That whole Loch Ness Monster thing, I looked it up. It started because Loch Ness is the largest lake in the UK. It's deep, real deep, and it holds 7.5 kilometers of water, cubed. You can kind of see why people thought there was a monster down there. Anything could be down there. But anyway, my point is, Lake Ontario is 217 times bigger than Loch Ness. And it's not even the biggest Great Lake, not by a long shot. Lake Superior, that's twice as deep as Loch Ness and has 1,500 times more water. Ships sink there all the time and are never found. The Edmund Fitzgerald, everyone knows that boat. Lightfoot made sure of that. But I mean, what kind of lake can sink a freighter? Lakes that big, they get weird. Storms blowing from nowhere. Oceans, when you get out to the middle of them, they turn into deserts. Not much life in them. The Great Lakes, it's the opposite. Full of life. I'm rambling. All I'm saying is, when you think about it, it's strange living in southern Ontario. You imagine yourself on land that people use every day, but all around you is water. Deep, blue water. Black water at night. Leo was as good as his word. Fresh out of high school, he got a job on a freighter through his mom, who used to work at Ontario Steel. Leo's mom, Carla, was 56 and already had COPD, something awful from the fumes she'd been working in since she was 17. She had an oxygen tank she carted around on a miniature dolly. When she got pissed off, she threatened to blow it up by throwing it at the wall. So then, Leo was on the lakes, running the routes from Hamilton to Cleveland to Thunder Bay to God knows where. And I was working the fryer at Mike's Fish and Chips on the beach. A summer gig till I figured out what to do next. Yeah, and then I'm 22, and Leo and I kind of lost touch. Yeah, I'd see him once every couple of months, then less and less after that. Then I'm 26, still working the fryer. And then one day, Carla calls me up to tell me Leo's freighter came home last night. But Leo wasn't on it. Well, shit. First stop was the docks. Carla dragging her squeaky oxygen tank around like it was a yappy dog on a short leash. She marched right up to a group of dock workers and asked them if they'd unloaded Leo's freighter. Well, they weren't sure. They didn't know everyone who worked on every ship. Carla said, "Okay, then tell me where I can find the list, the ship's manifest." They told her that, a lot of ships come in and out of here. You got to talk to management. So Carla marches off, leaving me to thank the guys with the six-pack of Labatt we picked up on the way. And just like that, I lose sight of her. It takes me 15 minutes to find her walking out of a portable office further up the pier, holding a sheet of paper. Behind her, some bald manager guy in Denver Hayes plaid and Dockers is giving her a dirty look and smoking a cig and clearly on the phone with port security. I tell Carla, we gotta go. She grabs my arm and shoves the paper in my face. It's a copy of the ship's manifest. Carla taps the top of the form. Expected journey time was 14 days, but the voyage actually took 15. Neither of us knew if that meant anything, but it's a start, right? There's a map attached to the manifest showing the route through Lake Huron, then Lake Superior to Thunder Bay, and then back again. While we're leaving, I call a few of the names on the manifest. None of them know what happened to Leo. They just assumed he came back with them. When Carla isn't looking, I call Leo, too. It rings, and rings, and rings, and rings, and rings. Carla and me, we didn't have much cash between us. No boat, that's for sure. But Carla still had a lot of friends at Ontario Steel, folks who played the game and got promoted, upper management types. The kinds of people who read the health reports, the real health reports, not the ones they send to the unions. The real reports say how many of their friends are slowly dying from making steel. Carla's name nestled in there as well. They read those reports, and it makes them feel like traitors, cowards, and then that guilt eats at them. Carla told me that some guys, they go asking for favors right away. But then you're using all that guilt up. And for what? A few $100, a couple extra days of vacation? You gotta give the guilt time to marinate. She'd been waiting years, sitting on that guilt like it was a nest egg, waiting for the moment when she'd really need it. When Leo didn't come back, she needed it. And that's why David Plover, VP of New Business at Ontario Steel, lent us his new boat. It was a pleasure craft, kind of thing you take out so you can lay on the deck and tan. About 30 feet long with a little bed or couch thing in the covered back area. Cramped quarters. Not meant for sleeping, but that's what we used it for. I didn't have a license, but Carla had spent all that time as a kid in a flat-bottomed aluminum outboard motor thingy, and she seemed convinced that Plover's boat was no different from that. We disembarked from Georgian Bay. She manned the wheel and pointed at different parts of the control system, telling me confidently what everything did, not bothering to shout to be heard over the motor. So I didn't get much of what she said. Then we both settled in for the trip. She stood strong for 3 hours, fingers gripped tight around the wheel before we stopped to eat. I started making us some bologna sandwiches until Carla told me to quit it. She'd spotted fishing poles in the hold, expensive-looking ones. Looked like they hadn't been used much. Carla said she could catch and gut a fish before I could make her a sandwich, and wouldn't stop saying it until I put down the mayo and brought her a rod. Carla said her dad had done a lot of fishing back when she was a girl and times were tough. And people have been fishing off the Hamilton Pier for a long time, she said. Not healthy to eat your catch anymore since the chemical runoff. I told her I knew that. Leo and I used to watch people fish off there at night. Sometimes we'd fish too. She got quiet, then said, Leo never told me about that. She could still cast off and get a hook on a line, so long as I held the hook for her. She knew which tackle to use and how to bait, and had this neat little trick where she wiggled the rod to make the lure look like it was a real alive thing. I asked, did she and Leo go out fishing much? She said no, not much. She'd wanted to, but Leo never found the time. I didn't tell her the thing I knew. It was the first time since Leo vanished that she seemed a little happy. Didn't want to break her heart. I'd never been around Carla for this long, and never alone. In middle and high school, Leo had kept his friends away from his house. Away from her. I'd never thought much of it. Just assumed he was like every other teenage boy. It wasn't until a year after high school that Leo told me he hated her. He'd said it matter of fact, like the earth is round or ice is cold. I can't remember what we've been talking about. I only remember the sad grin on his face. Like he was happy he'd shocked me, but sad about everything else. And, well, I changed the subject. I didn't ask. I didn't ask what had happened there to make it go sour. Or maybe it had always been sour. Our relationship started wrong because of some toxin in the bones. I didn't ask. I didn't know, and I still don't. So, I didn't tell Carla why Leo never fished with her. What good would it have done? Instead, I watched as Carla kept doing that little wiggle thing with the rod, trying to coax something up. The water was real clear down to about 50 feet. Below that, I could see shadows moving, twisting, swimming, but none came close enough to nibble at her hook. Took her a long time to give up. She told me that she'd rather die than eat bologna, wouldn't start the engine or move to a different spot. Then she changed tack and shot down the fish that she preferred bologna, and turned on me and yelled that it was my fault, that I'd been making noise, that we needed bigger bait. Maybe she already knew Leo hated her. The rest of the day's sailing was quiet. So was the night. I sat up, waiting to get sleepy, wearing my old hoodie to protect against the cold wind that blew across the deck. We were going north, and it felt like it. Every so often, I would hear that little plup, plup, plup sound I used to hear at the Hamilton docks on those nights Leo and I spent drinking beer and not saying much. Whatever made that sound lived here too. Next morning, we arrived in Sault Ste. Marie, another steel town, gateway from Lake Huron to Lake Superior. Carla made a stop off at the docks, parking the little pleasure craft next to 800,000 tonnage tankers. They did the same song and dance we'd done at the Hamilton Pier. Nobody knew Leo, and I noticed this time that the photo Carla showed him was about 10 years out of date. Leo still sporting his high school shaggy mullet. When had they last talked? I come to think of it, when did I last talk to Leo? There were two manifests here. One had him listed on the way in. but the manifest for the return voyage didn't include Leo. So he'd made it to his final destination. Then, on the way back, somewhere between Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie, he'd vanished. Well, that just left all of Lake Superior. It's cold there, even in August. 12-degree fresh water. No ice, of course. Still, you put your hand in and it's like you turn the kitchen tap as cold as it can go. It's cold, and it's deep, and it's so clear you can almost convince yourself that you can see the bottom. Carla steered the boat out onto open water. The coast disappeared behind us and beside us until there was only water all around. Over the side of the boat, I could see down until it got black after a few hundred feet. Here and there were those big fishy shadows, flicking their tails and darting in and out of the light. Neither of us were much for navigation, and we'd never been on a lake this big. There were no landmarks out in the open water. We were lost, but Carla wouldn't admit we were lost, and I didn't feel much like fighting her on that point. Looking back, it feels stupid that I believed we could find Leo in that place. 2 people searching all of Lake Superior. Come on. But Carla was so certain she could find him. I guess that was enough for me. I wanted to believe we were on the right path, traveling as fast as we could directly to Leo. We stopped for lunch and tried to drop anchor, but it never touched down. Just hung there in the water 1,000 feet down like the world's biggest fish hook. And Carla actually managed to fish the thing up for us. She was so proud of herself, kept telling me, see, and I told you I could do it, and isn't it the best fish you ever tasted? We sat there in the lounge area, eating around the tiny bones. And that's when things started to take a turn for the worst. Out of nowhere, the boat started to pitch back and forth. At first I thought it was the waves, those big ones that can sometimes well up. Carla's oxygen tank started rolling towards the edge of the deck, and I jumped to grab it. Too late. The tube ripped off her face, and she started bleeding from her nose. The boat bucked again and sent me on my ass. Carla croaked out, "The anchor!" then started coughing hard. I looked over to the winch and saw the heavy anchor cord was tight and vibrating like a guitar string. The boat lurched, and I aimed my body towards the winch, nearly tumbling right past it and into the water. I tried to crank, but the anchor wouldn't budge. Something was holding it down, pulling it down. Put my entire weight into the crank handle. Nothing. The boat keeled over to the side, slowly being pulled until it felt like we were going to capsize. I was so far over that I was looking directly into the water. The anchor line plunged down a few hundred feet and then vanished into the dark. There was nothing down there I could see. I did the only thing I can think of. I cut the anchor loose. The thick cord whipped up into the air for a brief moment, and then plunged into the water like an arrow. The boat rocked back into a normal position. I ran to Carla. She was on her back, one arm pretzeled around the bolted-down table legs, the other clutching her oxygen tank. Grabbed the tube and put it to her face. She breathed deep. Her lips had already started turning blue. The color was fading with each breath of oxygen. Carla didn't say much. Neither did I. We let the water and the wind take us wherever we wanted to go while we checked the damage to ourselves and the boat. The anchor was gone. That was a fact. Carla's oxygen tube had a hole in it, but that just needed some duct tape. We still had one fishing rod. The other must have rolled overboard. And Carla was mad. Real mad. I don't know what at, but she sure took it out on me over the rest of the day. Kept asking me if I was going to fuck it all up again. Kept reminding me that Leo's life was at stake here. I guess that was true. It got bad enough that when we sat down for dinner, she refused to give me any of our food. I'd had about enough at that point. We'd been out in the water for hours without seeing any land, and I was bored and hungry, and I guess a little angry too. I was just about to really lay into her when something over her shoulder caught my eye. An island, just about a kilometer away. I don't know why, but I shushed her. She didn't like that. But when she saw the island, she shut right up. The air was thicker. Felt like making noise was dangerous. It wasn't a huge island. I'd seen the maps. There are no islands in the middle of Lake Superior. And yet there was, covered in trees, birch trees with peeling white bark, trunks sticking straight up like pins in a pincushion. No leaves on any of them. Trees crisscrossed each other so much that I couldn't tell you how many of them there were. Didn't even look like there was land under them, just roots grasping roots. And birch trees. The branches fall off. They get these scars that look a hell of a lot like eyes. Looked like an island made of eyes. An island where no island existed. I couldn't shake the feeling like it had snuck up on us. It sure as hell wasn't anchored to the bottom of the lake. Couldn't have been. An island of eyes. Maybe it was floating around, looking for something. Carla and I wanted to get the hell out of there, but neither of us were stupid enough to turn on the motor. Too loud. Instead, we turned the wheel this way and that, trying to catch the current to drift away. It didn't work. The waves carried us forward. Or maybe the island was drifting towards us. Your vision gets all messed up when you can't see land. Were we moving? Was the island? The waves were just enough to hide any ripples. The island got closer, and I get a sense of the size of it. About the size of a big lake tanker. 300 meters. Another strange thing was there were no signs of anything living on it. No bird crap, no animal nests. Nothing. Carla lost her nerve. She called away towards the middle of the ship, dropped herself down to the decks. The trees couldn't see her, leaving me to stand up there, spinning the wheel. Of course it couldn't see us, right? But then why did I feel like I was being watched, being considered? I stood straight, not making eye contact. Then either we or it drifted on. After a few minutes, I noticed I was breathing again. Carla crawled out from where she'd been hiding. She didn't yell at me the rest of the day, just sat there shaking. We couldn't drop anchor, but we still needed to rest. Eventually, we both fell asleep. I guess we drifted in the night. I woke up a little after sunrise, still gray outside. The current had pushed us into an inlet. I stepped onto the deck, still rubbing sleep from my eyes, and heard that plop, plop, plop. No waves around the boat. Still water as far as the eye could see. Just something beneath the waterline, flipping and slipping up and down, hunting for bugs. I turned around and froze. A giant orange eye glared down at me. Blue and gray and green feathers, a neck like a snake, and thick, scaled legs. A huge heron, 25 feet tall, standing as motionless as a tree stump. I could have reached out and touched its leg. The only sound was that plop, plop, plop. I crept back. The heron twitched, locking me in its gaze, and I froze again. Slowly, it leaned down and extended its neck until its eye was 2 feet away from mine. This close, I could see how the edge of its beak was serrated, like a steak knife. And then the heron struck, stabbing down like a dagger. But it didn't aim for me. Instead, it shot down into the water and pulled out something as tall as me and kind of fish-like, and then snapped it down in a single swallow. The plop sounds faded away into silence as the creatures, whatever they were, scattered. The heron cocked its head, fixing one big eye in the water, and whipped around to look at me, pupil shrinking down to a pinprick as it focused. We stared at each other for a few seconds. Then it unfurled 2 wings the size of parachutes and took off, Blowing gusts of wind that rocked the boat so hard I had to grab onto the rail just to keep from falling overboard. I lost sight of it behind the trees. Flew real quiet for having such big wings. A few minutes later, Carla woke up. She wasn't scared of the island anymore. It was just some nonsense. I'd gotten her all worked up over nothing. I told her about the heron. First she got mad at me for lying. Then she got mad at me for not waking her up because, hell, when are you ever going to see something like that again? And, of course, it was also my fault. The boat drifted in the night. The heron was just the start. We saw a lot of weird stuff. A school of salmon, only 6 inches long, leaping out of the water as if they were swimming upstream to spawn, even though it was the wrong time of year, and there was no upstream. A big rock, smooth as a surfboard, floating in the lake. When we passed it by, I could see curly shell fossils all over it. And then it seemed to notice Carla and I watching it, so it sunk beneath the surface. Most of the time we couldn't see the bottom of the lake, but we steered through a shallow area at one point. I saw at least 20 shipwrecks in the lake bed beneath us. A few tanker ships, and a few that were as small as our boat. Carla got a frightened look when we saw the destroyed boats. I couldn't blame her. Got us both thinking about Leo. All these strange things seemed to extend the days. Our phone batteries had died, and I had the feeling time was passing both too slow and too fast. How long had we been out there? I don't know. I remember when Leo and I were kids, we got to go on this overnight field trip to a summer camp. It was weird. We were only there for like 28 hours, but it felt like a week. Me and Leo and the other boys in our cabin stayed up late talking about stuff in the dark. Stuff we'd never talk about again. Which girls we liked, what we were scared of, what we wanted to do. Couldn't see each other at all, just chatted with our voices that came out from the darkness. This one from the right, that one from the left, another one right above you. Almost like talking to different parts of yourself. I don't remember much from that school year. But I remember that one night. On the boat, Carla would sort of mutter to herself when she thought I was asleep. She'd say some nasty things about Leo, then stop herself and apologize out loud. Then say some nasty things about herself. Then get quiet. Maybe she was hoping I'd hear her and speak up. But I was tired and scared. I couldn't think of anything to say. After a while, Carla finally admitted we might need to get our bearings. The plan was to follow the shoreline until we saw something that made sense. That was when we came across the first body. It was a human body, floating and slowly turning over in the water like a piece of driftwood. It wasn't Leo. Some other kid I'd never seen before. They weren't dressed for the weather, wearing summer clothes, waterlogged shorts and sandals. And behind it, another body, floating and turning in the same way. This one was a much older man, wearing swimming clothes that I recognized from the old photos hanging on the wall of Mike's Fish and Chips. Carla scratched her chin, watching the bodies, deciding. I didn't wait for her to make up her mind. I grabbed the boat hook and pulled them close enough that I could wrestle them onto the deck. Carla helped when she saw I was serious, huffing and puffing on her oxygen as she hoisted one leg and then the other. The bodies were as cold as the water. I felt around looking for some kind of ID. Instead, I found a heartbeat. "They're still alive," I said. "Do you know CPR?" Carla was staring down at the two bodies, really looking close to the older man in swimming clothes. "Do you know CPR?" I said again. "There's no point." "They're going to die, Carla." Carla was quiet for a second. Then her face scrunched up. Look, it doesn't feel like we're supposed to wake them up." I looked back down at the two bodies. She was right. I didn't feel like I was supposed to wake them up or get them to the hospital. It felt wrong, like it wasn't my place to interfere in whatever was going on. Without another word, Carla and I pushed the bodies back into the water We watched until they'd floated out of sight. Carla pointed in the direction the bodies had come from. "That way," she said. Every so often, we passed by another body, all different kinds, all in different clothes. None of them were Leo. Carla still looked real close at each of them, especially the older guys. She used the boat hook to pull some of them closer. Each time she did, she chewed her lip real hard. Felt like she was bracing herself for something. Finally, I asked her what was up. "My dad, who worked at tankers, died in a shipwreck," said Carla, forcing the words out. "That's why I worked the steel mill. Kept me out of the lakes." It was quiet for a minute. No sound but breeze and the waves. I turned back to the steering wheel, and I heard this keening sound from behind me, like a dying bird. It was Carla, the sound coming from deep inside her chest. I didn't know what to do other than keep steering the boat. And Carla couldn't stop herself. It just got worse and worse until she was red-faced and on her back, saliva and snot dripping down her throat. She started coughing hard. I ran to her, but she pointed back to the wheel and choked out the word, "Land!" I turned the boat toward the closest shoreline. Carla was starting to settle down, but she was still gasping for air, still coughing, still panicking. "Get me off this fucking boat," she kept saying. I pulled us up, tossed a rope around a tree branch, and helped Carla and her oxygen tank get on land. She turned from weeping to irritated and kept trying to get away from me. Her face was still beet red and covered in snot. She dragged her tank around, catching it on root after root until I got fed up and just carried it for her while she ignored me. She was looking at each tree, pretending she wasn't just looking for an excuse not to talk to me. I asked her what she was looking for, and she said, "How the hell should I know?" and then shut it completely. Silent treatment, which was fine for me. It was real quiet. Peaceful. No crap on the trees. No animal nests. I saw birds flying way up above and way off in the distance. No way to tell how big they were. I told Carla we should eat something and went back to the boat. I propped myself against a tree, reaching out to grab the rope. The tree couldn't take the extra weight, collapsed into the lake and bobbed down below the water. Then it bobbed back up, and it wasn't a tree anymore. It was a body. A boy, maybe 15. He was floating there with his eyes closed, just like the ones we'd seen earlier. Back of my neck started tingling, like there were eyes staring at me. I whipped around. Birch trees. All the trees were birch trees, roots knotted together beneath our feet. A few hundred feet away, I saw the shoreline. I docked us on the moving island. Carla hadn't noticed yet. She come over to where I was standing and looked down at the kid floating in the water. She put two and two together and started pushing on another tree, only able to use one arm because the other was still holding her tank. She put her back into it, and the trunk tipped over into the water. Bobbed under a tree, and bobbed up a person. Guy in his late 40s with a beard, still wearing a goofy khaki fishing hat. The two bodies started floating out and away from the little birch island. "Carla," I whispered, "we need to go right now." But Carla didn't seem to notice or care where we were. I watched the bodies float out, not sure what else to do. "We need to go, Carla." I could hear that little ploop, ploop, ploop sound, just like I heard it back when Leo and I were drinking tall boys down by the pier. Except it was a lot louder. "Carla, we need to get the fuck out of here," I hissed at her, almost shouting. Started making my way to the boat, still feeling the birch eyes on me. Out in the water, the two bodies drifted together, like planks will sometimes do, pushed together by the current until they're so close the water can't get between them to push them back apart. current pushed them this way and that, rotating them slowly as they moved out further into open water. That bloop, bloop, bloop sound also moving away from the island, following them. A bubbling from under the surface, and then for a split second it was like someone pulled the plug on the lake. Water started pouring down into some deep, dark cave. Then, silently, jaws breached the surface and snatched the two bodies. The fish turned, one giant eye looking for a moment at me and Carla as it flipped over to dive back into the depths. The spotted sides followed, and then the giant red tail striped with black. I stopped moving. Carla leaned against a birch.
My pops used to catch pike on Lake Ontario.
I nodded.
Never caught one that big.
I nodded again. The birch creaked, and I turned to look. Carla was leaning pretty heavy on it. She seemed older now. Much older. Funny how you can miss a thing like that. If the person is stubborn and mean enough, you just think they'll be around forever, that nobody can make them do anything. Let's go back to the boat, Carla. Get out of here. I helped her to her feet. She walked behind me while I carried her oxygen tank for her, careful not to pull it out of her nose. The birch eyes watched us go.
You think Leo got eaten up by that fish?
She said. I don't know, I said, keeping my eyes on the knotty roots so I didn't trip.
Or maybe that heron you told me about. Or maybe he's one of these trees. Or I guess it could be a million other things.
Yeah, I think he's here, somewhere, I said. Definitely.
Well, that's good,
she said. And then I couldn't hear footsteps behind me anymore. When I looked back, there was just another birch tree, lopsided eyes staring back at me, and an oxygen tube tangled up around it. I put my hand on the trunk. It was a little damp, and the bark was peeling like it had been there for years. All at once, the island seemed to turn its attention away. The tingle on my neck faded. I untangled the tube and took the tank back to the boat. Thought about pushing the tree into the water, let her float out into the lake. But it felt wrong, just like it felt right to leave. It was a long, quiet boat trip back. Every bird flying on the horizon looked 25 feet tall. I heard that bloop, bloop, bloop sound a few times. Each time I'd look down into the water, as deep as I could. I thought I saw shadows moving down there. Big ones. Maybe the waves even changed direction a little bit, like something was stirring them up from beneath. Around Sault Ste. Marie, I started seeing people again. I didn't know how long we'd been out there, or how long I'd been out there alone. And it turned out it was just 3 days. I got the boat back to Georgian Bay all right. David Plover didn't ask where Carla was. He was just relieved I didn't damage the hull or anything. I didn't, go to the police or anything. I didn't even know what I would tell them. Carla was gone, and it wasn't like explaining it would do anything for anyone. I let it go and went back to work in the fryer. It was still summer, and busy enough to take my mind off things. Well, not entirely. I got into the habit of calling Leo's number every so often. It would just ring and then go to voicemail. I don't know why I kept doing it, but I'd usually be drinking when I did. A few weeks go by, and once again I've got a bottle in one hand and the phone in the other. I call Leo. It rings and rings like I expect. But then someone picks up. Hello? Hello? Who's this? I say, kind of raspy and slurring my words, thinking someone has picked up Leo's old number. But no. It's Leo, says Leo, like it's the most normal thing in the world. Mike, is that you? Nice little surprise. How you been? We've been wrong. We've been all wrong from the beginning. Leo wasn't missing. He just hadn't come home because he decided to stay in Thunder Bay for a bit. He didn't pick up when I called because he didn't have my contact info saved on his new phone. It had been a while since we last talked, and he didn't recognize my number. Thought it was spam. He'd just been living his life. But enough about me. How the last couple of years been treating you? Leo asked me. Had it been that long? I couldn't say anything but, I'm doing good. And then I just said the next thing that came to mind. You know, Carla was worried about you when you didn't come home. I told him. She, reached out to me. Yeah, well, he said. I could hear him shrugging over the phone. She and I haven't been on speaking terms for a while now. Hell, how did she even know I was on that freighter? Now it was my turn to shrug. Yeah, I didn't know what to say. How much to tell him, what he'd even want to know about her or me or what we'd gone through together or where she was now. I still don't know what I should have said. So I didn't say anything. Silence stretched on. All right, said Leo after a while. Well, thanks for letting me know. Don't be a stranger. That was the last time I talked to Leo. The Wrong Station is made possible with the generous support of our listeners on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/The Wrong Station for bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes content, ad-free listening, and additional goodies celebrating our decade of dread. This week's episode, Great Lakes, was written by Jacob Duarte Spiel, performed by Anthony Botelho. Thank you to Kat Reynolds, Melanie Nielsen, A. Kinney, Ribbon, K.O., and Lenora Rose for helping us keep the lights, well, off. The Wrong Station is co-produced by Alexander Saxton, Anthony Botelho, and Jacob Duarte Spiel, with music composed and performed by Alon Citrin, and arranged for the viola and performed by Viola Schmidt. You can follow us on social media at The Wrong Station, or email us at thewrongstation@gmail.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.